Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a very special edition of Veteran Nation. We are live right now. So, wherever you're watching us, welcome, welcome. I know that we're paired on some channels we're normally not on. So, those of you who are new to Veteran Nation, thank you for being here. We try to put on a great show, and our mission here is to help and entertain veterans, military, and their families. And I don't think we'll have a problem being entertained today because we have a podcaster who's going to be on, and she does her own podcast, Chatting with Candice. And let me go ahead and bring her right onto the show. Candice Horbacz. She does a lot of relationship stuff, and she's a former adult entertainer. Candice, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
I have as well. I get a lot of clips from your podcast that people send me, and they're all things I can agree with. A lot of relationship type of stuff.
Oh, how refreshing. You don't really get a lot of positive feedback on the internet because, like, most sane people will watch something and go about their day, but it's always like the unhinged people that have to let you know how awful you are. So, thank you for that positivity. I wish there was like some more of it online.
Yeah, the critics always kind of speak the loudest and the most, don't they?
They absolutely do. It's a good exercise, though, right? For just like mental agility and resilience.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Now you've had a lot of experience. Um, how long have you been doing your podcast? Let me start with that.
So the podcast is about 5 years old. I started it when my oldest son was, a few months old. We were at the very beginning of COVID, and I think it was one of the requirements that you start a podcast while you were in lockdown, and I was terrified. It was honestly, like, one of the scariest career moves I've made, which to some people is gonna sound crazy given, like, my previous career, but I think that there's a certain level of vulnerability that you're showcasing when it's just you and a microphone and you're like sharing like your thoughts and your feelings and your soul some of the time. So when those things get critiqued, it's a lot harder to deal with versus like pretending to be this character, right? Like that's easy. That's like, water off a duck's back. But the podcasting has definitely been the most vulnerable thing I've done so far.
See, now I go by the Skipper on the show, even though everyone knows my name is Mike. Um, I still tell people the Skipper it's a version of me, but it's still a character because it's a way for me to remind myself whenever I'm on air, I have to be entertaining.
Yeah,
So
and that's a lot of pressure too, right? Because you're a real person and you have a day before and after you're recording, so you have to be able to compartmentalize that, and I think that's probably something that a lot of people in the community are really good at, and it seems, insane to have that there are any overlaps, but that's also something that you have to have in the adult industry as well, is the ability to compartmentalize, and I think that, there's a lot of what Gad Sad would call like this emotional incontinence, where a lot of people feel like you have to constantly be expressing every feeling and every thought you have all of the time, at like this radical self-expression and authenticity. And part of like maturing is realizing like context, right? Like there are times where you have to be strong and solid and wait to process things later. And like you don't get to kind of be this emotional mess all the time. So I do think that there's value in it, but just like anything else, right? If it's taken to an extreme, then it can kind of be a vice. So it's like finding that sweet spot of professionalism and self-regulation or emotional regulation, but also not stifling down your feelings or pretending that they don't need to be processed.
absolutely, and you're not the first former adult entertainer I've had on the show. I've had a couple, and uh, a couple of them have actually been veterans, but I've seen a lot of parallels with veterans and adult entertainers, the way we kind of compartmentalize the things you were talking about right there. Uh, because there are things that people just don't realize will affect your life, and you have to have some way to mentally cope with things, good or bad, good or
Mhm.
bad. And it's really interesting that you say that because, yeah, it hits me a little bit close to home.
Have you had Brandy Love on?
I have not.
She
No.
would be an excellent guest. Like, she is, like, a patriot through and through, like, she loves America, she is unapologetically outspoken about her politics, she's a very cool lady.
I I would love to talk with her. I'll tell you the last one I had on, who's a very good friend of the show. She might be watching right now. Is Astrid Starr. She was a performer, but she also was a Navy veteran,
Oh,
and
wow.
great friend that I met through the show. And yeah, very interesting interview. Um, Now, with your podcast, do you find that there's any type of things that you've learned or any limitations that you're like, oh, I don't want to go into these areas?
I learned that you don't have to have an opinion on everything, and you can get pressured into commentating on whatever is headlining that day or that minute, and it's really tempting because if you know how to work the algorithm, you're like, "Oh, I gotta do this so that I get more eyes and ears," but I really don't like to speak on things if I feel like I'm not informed enough or if I don't feel like I have, like, a heart pull towards it. I think we are inundated with so much information and so much news and so many like wrongdoings around the world that it can be very overwhelming. And if you experience that unmitigated, then it's gonna be really overwhelming, right? And then part of it too is you have a responsibility to your viewers and, like, do you want all of the content to be doom and gloom, or do you wanna make sure that you're balancing that out with things that are inspirational and gonna help them grow? So, I try not to let my, like, reptile brain get, stimulated too much and, like, jumping into the things that seem easy. Another thing too is you'll see, we have things that are very polarized right now. So it's like very black and white thinking. And that's also easy to fall into, especially if something seems like, quote, obvious, but like taking a beat and saying, like, what's a third perspective to this that people aren't saying? Because not most things aren't like inherently wrong, right? Or people aren't all evil or all bad. And I don't know, like just approaching things with some more nuance. That's something I try to do.
I've noticed that, especially here recently. I do a lot of my stuff on X, and yeah, it's a lot of people are very tribal, and
Mhm.
you're against this portion, so that means I'm completely against you. And it's sad that our society, we've moved that way, because I like to comment on a lot of things. And me being a veteran, you know, there are people like, look at what this veteran said. And I'm like, well, he has a right to say that. And, I, whether I agree with it or not, you know, a lot of the things I did was about, making sure that we all had these type of freedoms. Um, I don't know if you experienced that as much.
I think, and again, another similarity, it's that people try to kind of like lump you all into one bucket. So if you're part of a community at large, then you all unilaterally think the same way and behave the same way instead of approaching people like individuals. And I think, especially in the civilian world, you hear veteran and automatically you assume like stand up person, they're principled, they're valued, or they have values and like they're going to act in accordance with, like, you can see that in politics that's not the case, right? How many vets are in politics and they sold out just as easy as a civilian would have. So I think you have to treat people like people, and with me it's the opposite. So like with your community, I think most people would assume like all of you are really, again, like principled and stand up men and women. With my community it's the opposite, as everyone automatically assumes that like you're a degenerate or that you lack self-control or that you're like really traumatized. So it's like, don't you have to treat the person as an individual. Like, yes, there are certain stereotypes, but again, like, do you want to be a critical thinker or do you want to just kind of let people do the thinking for you?
Absolutely, and I think that's where, you know, veterans, I found, especially when it comes to things like sex work, we're a little bit more, accepting than I think
Well, of
most.
course, you guys watch all our content during deployment.
Well,
Like, of
not
course.
just that. I think we also, when we travel and we go overseas, there's a lot of places we go where there'll be a red light district, and it's just kind of accepted that that's what it is.
Mhm.
And, so we're a little bit more worldly, I think, than most Americans. Um,
That's
but
a
I,
good point too. Mhm.
I've told several adult entertainers, hey, you should focus a lot on veterans and military because we're incredibly loyal fans.
No, you really are. I mean, and it's honestly, like, the most rewarding that was, like, the most rewarding part of my time in the industry, is I've always been, like, really engaged with my fan base, so a lot of, like back in the day, texting was really big, like, there'd be texting apps, and I had so many men that were deployed, and the coolest part was and, like, this is, like goes against the narrative that, like, all adult content ruins relationships and it's, like, evil and toxic and manipulative. I had so many men that would, like, send, like, their wives would send them my fleshlight, and then they would watch content together, and, like, they would have a hot moment, and I would help them, like, "Okay, like, how do I talk to my wife?" I'm like, "Okay, here's, like, a little prototype," and then he'd be intimate with each other, right? So it's almost like helping them bridge that gap because the wife would be insecure, like, he's gone for however long, he's in this exotic place, I don't want him to cheat, so it was actually a way for them to stay intimately connected even through distance.
It I think it actually, like you said, if taken the right way, can absolutely improve relationships. Communication is always the best thing that people should have. And if you're communicating with your partner about the type of things that turn you on, and the type of things that you like, or things you'd want to explore, I think that absolutely can help a relationship. Um, but of course, I'm saying this as a divorced man, so.
I don't think that means like so there's another one too, right? Is like if you're divorced and you're automatically a failure and like let's not listen to that person's advice, but like no, you've experienced all of the things. And I don't think that a relationship ending is a marker of it being a failure. Like it could have just simply run its course, right? And that assumption of it being a failure is that you didn't take anything away from it. So I look at it as like a lesson and that in that perspective, it's like you have the ability to probably in hindsight say like this is where it started to deteriorate or fall apart or these were where my needs weren't being met or this is where I wasn't showing up as a partner, right? So all of that stuff is super valuable. So if I'm someone who wants to be in a marriage or wants like a happy relationship, I'm going to listen to everybody. I'm not going to listen to the people that are just pretending they don't ever get into a fight with their significant other and they've got 3.5 children and a golden retriever and life is beautiful because that's not realistic either. So I mean, it's like again, like to use like a more of like a military reference. Like I want to know someone who's like been in the mud and like actually been in a gunfight, right? And has the scars to show because like they've learned more than someone who's like never left basic. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Once you've been through some stuff, you've been there before. You know how to
Right.
react, type of stuff. So, absolutely makes complete and total sense. Um, do you find, uh, you kind of touched on it, a lot of military deployed, but do you find that there is a very specific part of the audience that is military and veterans for you?
Um, honestly, it's interesting. So I would say they again, when you talked about how loyal they are, absolutely, because most of, like, my military following followed me from when I was doing adult to the podcast, and people are gonna say bullshit, but I swear to you, it's absolutely the truth, is once they started consuming, like, my podcast content, they're like, "I can't watch anything else because I don't want like, you're now this different version, and I don't want those 2 worlds to mix." So, like, I still think you're beautiful or like I still love your content, but like I can't watch it. So I find that they do split off. Like there's very
Okay.
few that kind of dabble in both.
And just for the audience, just so you know, here's how this happens when you're deployed. You take uh, your hard drive and you pass it to your buddy, and you trade all the movies and videos. I mean, everything. I, we were getting brand new movies deployed. We were getting old ones, and it was, hey, I'm looking for this movie. You know, someone. Oh yeah, so and so's got it, and you trade everything, and a lot of that was adult content, and you know, it, there were definitely videos that were very, very popular, and people were like, "Hey, have you seen this one?"
Mhm. That's funny.
So it
Male
was,
bonding.
it, it was a very interesting part of the culture. I'll say that.
Mhm.
And me deployed, I was an officer, but of course, I had my Marines. They're like, "Hey, sir, I got something to show you." But it's all to get through the deployment. It's all, you know, everybody just trying to find their little piece of happiness, and what cannot be a fun time. But I loved being deployed. I thought it was a great time.
I hear that a lot, actually. I obviously have no idea, but I hear that a lot from people that have been deployed.
For me, it was easy because a lot of the day-to-day stuff that you worry about, uh, goes away. You
Mm.
only are focused on, "We have to get this job done." And I've said this on my show before, I'd come in at 7 in the morning, I would leave at 9 or 10 at night, and for the other than going for lunch or taking some time to work out, I was there all day, and that was my day, and it surprisingly did make things go by faster.
Mhm.
Um, uh I do want to remind everyone in the chat, if you have any questions or anything, I'll try to get them and bring them up. But yeah, definitely post us your questions and comments. Um, Now, with podcasting, it's obviously significantly different. But you've touched on one thing that I've talked about: celebrating your audience. And I've told so many people that's important. For you, how important is it?
I think it's massive. I think there's a difference between having a fan base and having a community. And if you want longevity in the career and like you also want a level of like contribution, which I think is why most of us do what we do, whatever field that might be, is like that's where fulfillment comes from, right? So even from like a selfish perspective, you want to be contributing because you get something out of that as well. You have to engage, right? You have to care, and you have to also intentionally curate who you want following you, because like I can tell you right now, I get inundated with like just hate watchers, right? So I have to make sure that again, like what I'm talking about, what I'm posting is not attracting the wrong people. And if I see that happening, I have to really quickly like sever that because I don't want that, right? Like I
Mhm.
truly think that even if it's just digitally, you're kind of like quantumly entangled with these people. And I don't want like those, visceral angry men online following me. I don't want those women that are so detached from themselves and like their body and their spirituality. I don't want any of that. So I think the way that you do that is by unapologetically being yourself, and like instead of trying to always show up as like this perfect version, I think in all of your flaws, you're gonna automatically kind of filter out who's not supposed to be there. So again, I think community is that is going to be the future of all content creation. Like this whole like influencer and just having massive fan bases, I think that's going to go away.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I see we have a large audience watching right now, and you see all the comments on the side. Everyone, please, if you will get your comments up if you do make some, so don't be afraid to put in a question or comment. Um, and I think what you said is actually very important about, yeah, attracting the right type of audience, because yeah, there no matter where you go, you're going to get people who are critics. They're going to criticize, but there are certain people, and I've in some of the stories I've done, and I've got my co-host. We do a lot of harassment and corruption and government accountability stuff, and but with that, we get a lot of people who are not just hate watching; they are obsessive, very
Mm.
obsessive, and just don't realize all this stuff is online. This is not real. But they try to take it to a very, very real place. Um, I for one, I've had people try to dox me, to
Mhm.
try to contact people in my life, but it, I was kind of expecting it, so I did get a chance to put up some barriers. I don't know
Mhm.
if you had that.
I was so aga I got into the industry relatively young. I think I was, like 19 or 20 when I first started, like, getting into the adult space, and so, no, like, there you definitely don't understand the vulnerabilities of doing that because it's super psychological, right? Like, I if you someone's already kinda not okay, and then they're consuming, like, intimate content, and if they're consuming that in volumes and volumes and volumes, and then you get catfish now, these people can like connection is so important, and like the need to be loved and to love is so important that people will ignore every obvious red flag at the chance to experience that. So you can say like, how do these people fall for these cons? Like it's so obvious it's not that person, but that person is so empty and they're just like they'll take whatever scraps they can get. So then that leads to like a very dangerous individual, because when they realize that they've been duped, they don't go after, that random farm in Ghana. Like they're going after me because somehow they think it's my responsibility that, they didn't put the piece that connect the dots. So I've had like some really scary instances with like stalkers or people that had been catfished. And unfortunately, like that's something I see only getting worse as AI kind of advances. And it's like, how are you going to be able to tell what's real and not real? So there are some safeguards I have in place. Like I'm very fortunate that I'm connected to some very like very smart, very dangerous people. But at the end of the day, like that risk never goes to zero.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I will say I'm very fortunate. I don't think anyone's going to be trying to use me to catfish. So
Mhm, mhm. You would be surprised, it would be for something else maybe. Like, I've seen them do it with men and actually a lot of military men too, so it's usually not a romantic thing when a guy's getting catfished, but it's like a business venture or something like that.
yeah, I do get a lot of that, and honestly, for veterans, there's a lot of predatory stuff out there. I'm working on a video for if you were to type in veteran legal help, uh, 90% of what you're going to find are law places that are they're just predatory on veterans,
Yeah.
and they're looking for quick money on veterans' behalf. Because as a veteran, when you do VA stuff and some of the other benefits out there, there is some money out there if you know where to look, and it can be very profitable. A lot of veterans just don't realize and don't take advantage of everything, but when they do, it's really hard to navigate, when there's lawyers out there who they just want to, they want a chunk of your disability claim. That's all they're looking for. They're
Mhm.
not really looking to help, even though that's what they try to say. And with me, since we created the Veteran Nation Foundation, which is an offshoot of this show, I did that because I get so many veterans who reach out. I wanted a way to. I, I can't solve their problems. I can try to help and get them to other resources, but I get people who are, hey, I need help, and they'll tell me, you know, they'll give me a sob story, but I always remember I have limits and
Mhm.
I'll work within these barriers. And there've been a couple people that, hey, that guy, he showed you a DD-214, but that was fake. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, I'm not really responsible for that. I make sure that, I do try to do whatever vetting I can, but there are people who are always going to try to scam. So, you know,
Mhm.
there's only so much we can do. I know for me, I can go to the VA and say, was this guy actually a veteran? Get a statement of service and be like, okay, that's what I can do.
Mhm. Yeah, you have to have really strict boundaries because otherwise you're gonna exhaust yourself and you're not gonna be able to help anybody, And again, it goes back to kind of content or information overload where there's just like so much that you can be paralyzed with how much you want to help people, and you have to just do like the next best thing, right? Like what's like the next actionable thing I can do. And for me, I try to make a list of like 3 things a day, and I'm like, those are like the 3 things that I need to tackle, and anything else is a bonus, and anything that doesn't carries over to the next day. Otherwise, again, you're going to be so overwhelmed, and it's like you end up with like that analysis paralysis, right? And then again, nothing gets done, no one gets helped.
Absolutely, and I'm big on that stuff, and I've been telling people, I've been working on my PTSD for I'm coming up on 10 years now, and if it's all meaningless if you're not willing to work at it, and it's just doing little things. But I mean that applies to everything in everyone's life. Uh, we
What
just
have you done for the PTSD as far as treatments go?
I've actually done quite a few things. I've been in therapy almost nonstop since 2016, and I was willing to go the moment another veteran says, "I think you've got PTSD and you should go for treatment." And so that was the first step. A lot of people don't even want to do that. Uh, Dealing with the VA, what the VA does for veterans that really puts us behind is about every 6 months they would say, "Oh, your therapist is now out of the network, so now we got to send you a new one. You got to relive the trauma."
Mm,
And a lot of people avoid that. I'm glad that I didn't because, you know, touching on that trauma is like touching on a nerve. The more you touch it, the more it desensitizes. So I'm actually now very thankful that happened. because I was able to get to now a point where if someone asks me about my trauma, I don't get emotional about it anymore. There are still things that, will bring up memories, but I have tried different medications. I've also tried different calming techniques. I've talked about this on my show before. One of the weirdest things that calms me down is I will go onto YouTube and watch someone do spray paint art. Just
Mhm,
the sounds and watching it, it just like I'll fall asleep. It
mhm.
relaxes me that much. So finding things like that, what works for one person won't work for another. I know people have tried to get me to do marijuana. Does not work for me. That only if I'm having a severe attack will it help.
Mm.
So it's not a part of my PTSD plan, but definitely trying different things. I've tried yoga, I've tried Reiki, all those things. Like some of them work a little bit, some of them offer different things. I'm looking to possibly try EMDR,
I've
which is
heard great things about that.
I have as well, and there's a therapist here locally that provides it. So we just have to find the right time. Yes, I'm noticing people are pointing out that I've got my blow up doll Lacey again. Thank you, John, the fan, who sent it to me. So yeah, see, veterans were very comfortable with a lot of the things of the sex industry.
See, I love it though. It's like, what's the point of being stuffy? And I had this conversation, I don't even remember when or who it was with, but it like, you know how when you're little and you create these caricatures of what an adult is, right? Like what a 25-year-old is, what a 40-year-old is, like what a quote grown up is. And you wonder like at what point in life do you stop having fun? Or do you get, like, so stuffy or so, like, puritanical? And then what I'm coming to is, like, "Oh, they were always that way." Like, that's just, like, a personality thing. Because I mean, I'm 36 and I don't feel like a quote grown up. Like, I don't like, what does that even mean? What is like, I don't know. I see some of like the behavior online where everyone is like so judgmental and authoritative like towards people. I'm like, where is that coming from? I have no interest in telling someone how to live their life if they're an adult. Like I have zero interest in doing that.
That's probably been one of the biggest things for me about, not just going into PTSD therapy, but actually owning it and saying, I'm going to work at this to be better. I just turned 46 and I'm going on 13. Uh, I've, I've learned to accept a lot of the things about me, especially the hard truths, the things I don't like about myself, just learn to accept them. And as people know, especially if they were watching last night, I did Skipper's Sunday hot tub party. Uh, I am not above making a fool of myself, and it's fine. I understand the weird stuff about me, and I'm going to own it 100%. And honestly, that's probably been the biggest thing that shocked me about going into therapy was the things that are not PTSD related that I've improved upon.
Mhm. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I would definitely look into the MDR stuff. I think, the only thing I've seen with people I know that have done it is that, like, sometimes because I think your body can talk to you, right? Like, I think you can store trauma physically and, especially if it's like, like, quote, "big T trauma." So I think if you're doing that and, like, you notice, like, yourself maybe getting sick or your immune system is acting up, then that kinda means, like, you need to just take a minute, right? And let your body kind of like detoxify essentially. Because I have seen people where like they would start to get sick and then they would just kind of keep doing the sessions and it would get worse and worse instead of like sometimes you need that break. So just like don't force it beyond whatever threshold you have.
Absolutely. It, I've actually got a guy that I met at a veterans kind of symposium type of thing, and he wants me to go on one of his ayahuascas, and
Mm,
I'm not opposed to it. I said I don't think it'll be my thing, but I am willing to try it because one thing we always said deployed is if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid.
why ayahuasca?
Um, he just was talking to me about it,
That's
and
that's a big one to jump to.
um, for me, I'll try stuff. you know?
Have you done anything else psychedelic-wise?
No,
Do you
never.
okay,
Not really.
okay. I would say from the research, the things that are the most beneficial, especially to vets when it comes to PTSD or CPTSD, tends to be either MDMA, psilocybin, or a combination of the two. I don't know that there's a ton with ayahuasca, although I do know some people anecdotally have had a great time. Like one of my really good friends, Kelsey Sheeran, she's really big into all of the plant medicines, and I think her first one was actually ayahuasca. So I think some of you are just like absolute lunatics, right? And you love like that, you love jumping in to the deep end. So if you feel called to it, I think that again, it goes back to body intelligence. Listen to that. But I would say also maybe consider maybe the more gentle ones first.
Mhm. What if I ever do something like that, my biggest thing is I would wanna make sure that I'm in a safe environment.
If you need someone, I know professional facilitators that are like top notch, like world renowned facilitators. They work with vets a lot. They work with dignitaries, politicians, like very, very, very good at what they do, and everything is very safe, facilitated, tested, all of the things.
Mhm, and that's what the gentleman that I met with, that's exactly what he does. He's like, "No, this is straight up veterans therapy that I do." And, yeah, it's just I was like, "Well, it's nothing I would normally do, but I'm not opposed to trying different stuff." And again, if it works, it
If
works.
worse is not stupid, yeah.
Um, Now I do wanna talk a little bit about, relationships, with you. Um, I've seen where a lot of people are saying that there's a crisis in our society of relationships. Do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more like everyone a lot of people feel very alone, and a lot of people feel like they don't have a real connection to someone. They used to do studies where they would ask, how many close friends did you have? And it used to be like 5 to 7, and then we saw the average go to 3, and now we have people that don't even say 1. Right? Like that, how isolating is that? So I think it goes beyond just romantic relationships. I think they're all of our relationships. And part of it is, we've become so decentralized. And it's going to sound kind of silly, but when you and I were growing up, there'd be like one show, right? And we would like that would be an anchor point for us. Is like, oh, did you see the episode of blah
Yeah.
blah blah, right? And like there is something that kind of binds you in that. And now no one's watching the same stuff because again, there's millions of different shows that get released every single day. We have this feeling that we're constantly like inconveniencing someone. So like if someone moves in or has a baby or like what like I'm not going to go over. I don't want to bother them. When it was standard practice to go over, bring a gift, bring something that you baked or cooked, and introduce yourself, introduce them to the neighborhood. And now you're like, oh, that's weird. Like we don't want to be seen as weird. And it's like, well, when did that start? Like, yeah, be weird. It's probably, and then guess what? They're probably not going to think that. They're going to think, oh wow, what a like hospitable person, what a nice warm person. It's the same when I think when people try to ask people out on dates. I think men specifically because you guys are the hunters, so typically it's like your move first. It goes back to not wanting to be seen as weird. I was talking to some guys the other night, and they were all saying that they're worried that someone's going to take their phone out and start recording and yelling at them if they approach. And I was like, you need to get offline because women aren't doing that. Like they're not
Mhm.
doing that. Like you might get dismissed, but I think dating it's a volume game, right? You guys are going to get a lot of no's, and that's not a bad thing. It's just whatever reason you're not compatible and she's not feeling it, move on to the next one. And you're like, just it, again, I think when you said touching a trauma repetitively kind of like softens the blow a bit. It's going to be the same when you're reaching out to people. I moved to a new town. Again, it goes beyond romantic relationships. I had no girlfriends. I moved here. I worked in the industry. So it wasn't like I had a place where I was meeting, women my own age or anything like that. And I had to like ask women out to be friends. That's weird. Like I'm getting a taste of what you men go through, and I get it. It is very hard, but I did it nonetheless. And now one of those girls is like my best friend in the entire world. So whether you're trying to like find a male community or like find a romantic partner, like part of that is jumping in, being vulnerable, and taking the risk of being dismissed or turned down. And you can feel it, but then move on.
Yeah, yeah. Um, There's some things that definitely ring true, it being a veteran to that, but also some things that I think work in our favor. For instance, we get put together, in the field. Hey, you're sharing a tent with this person, and you just gotta kind of find a way to make it work. And by the end of it, you end up, oh, this guy's my new best friend because we've been forced together in really bad conditions. And also, when you are on a base, everybody, you're kind of forced to say hello to people and good morning, because you don't know who that other person is if they're in civilian attire. So you get very used to that. And I remember, just a couple weeks ago, my fans know I was up in Vegas, and I always forget. Like, I'm in a very rural area, and I'm on a base every single day, even today. And I'll forget, and I'll just say good morning to people, and they look at me like, "What are you trying to, like, take money from me or something?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm in a big city now."
What
And,
state are you in?
I'm in Southern California.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Mhm.
yeah, I'm right next to Joshua Tree Park. It's very rural out here. But yeah, I went to Vegas, and I was just like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And people were just giving me weird looks, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah. I gotta go back into living in the city mode."
See, that's one of the things I love about living in the South, though, is most people still are very friendly, so people wave, they say hello, they make small talk when you go to the coffee shop, like, all of that's pretty standard, but I do see some of the kids, like, younger generation kinda get anxious and all of that, but, I think part of that too is, like, socialization when kids are little, so like, the boomer parents were kind of like, created a bunch of latchkey kids, right? We kinda raised ourselves. So, if you are just hanging out with peers, you never are really shown how to communicate and eye contact and manners and all of those things. So, we're kind of, we're lagging behind a little bit. And then the generation, what is it? The Zs, like, they grew up just online, so it's even worse, right? They've done studies where people that spend too much on time on social media or any kind of like scrolling app, well, they'll actually start to show behaviors similar to like a pretty severely autistic person as far as not being able to read nonverbal cues. And guess what? 90% of our the way we communicate is nonverbal. So then again,
Mhm.
like it all circles back to like why aren't we in relationships? We don't know how. Or we know how to have a relationship with this thing, but not with a person. So
And I think things have changed quite a bit, and because, with our technology today, things are less of a mystery. So I think people are less adventurous, and I'll give you an example. The movie Stand By Me, if you've ever seen it, it's
great
about,
movie.
yeah, kids going to see a dead body where they knew there was a dead body. Nowadays, I think if you if you were a Gen Zer and said, "Hey, you guys want to go see a body?" They'd be like, "No, I can see that, pull that up on my phone." It's so I think there's less mystery to stuff like that. So there's a little bit less adventure.
Yeah, they're like utterly unimpressed. Like, they're just always unimpressed. It's like just like total little brats. Yeah, I don't know how you I think part of that, if they're young enough and if you're a parent, you can probably shake it out of them a little bit by like forcing them out of their comfort zone and like take being the bad guy. That's another thing with parenting is no one ever wants to be the bad guy.
Right.
All these parents want to be liked all of the time and you have to remind yourself you're not their friend and you have a bigger responsibility about kind of like molding this person to be strong so that they can like go through life on their own efficiently and hopefully as a happy person. But if you're constantly just like making them happy, don't upset them, whatever pacifies them, like you're making someone soft and they're going to suffer later on, right? Like you're kind of you're just delaying that essentially, like instead of them suffering in the moment when they're 2, 3, 4, they're going to suffer as an adult.
You know, I wholeheartedly agree. I have a 15-year-old son, and I constantly try like, if I call him anything, I'll say the little man, young man, because for me, I always want to remind myself like, I'm building a man,
Hmm.
and I don't say things like buddy or anything like that because he's not my friend. He's my son. I do want, and a lot of that's from my military time. I do want that separation of he's never going to look at me as my friend, but always respect me as a father. That doesn't mean we can't enjoy each other's company. Doesn't mean we can't do fun things. We'll do all that, but I'm always cognizant of that, and that's I was always true of that even in the military. I would always make sure that my Marines knew, even though I was the senior guy, that I respected them. And I would do certain things. So even if we were joking around, they still knew I respected them and that they, you know, would need to show me respect. But one thing I do love doing with my son is blowing his mind. And it's for me, it's the most mundane stuff. And I'll tell you a perfect example is I was saying how when I was a kid, everybody had ashtrays in their home, whether they smoked or not, and they were furniture.
Mhm.
He was just like, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "Because people were gonna smoke in your house.
Mhm.
You didn't smoke." That's the way it was.
Yeah, like, do you remember restaurants? That blows my mind, just remembering when there was smoking and non-smoking sections. It's like a different life.
Airplanes. There used to be smoking sections on airplanes.
The dumbest place to smoke. A giant tube filled with oxygen. What do you think's gonna happen? I'm surprised there weren't more explosions.
We were
You're just
carefully
living
raised.
life,
Our parks were literally, metal bars on top of concrete.
getting, like, third-degree burns going down the slide.
There were no, rubber chips at the bottom. It was like, "No, you just landed and bounced."
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, it's funny because like, the littlest stuff they get amazed by because they just can't comprehend the world that way, um, which is pretty interesting because 'cause we're not that far timeline detached from it.
No, we're really not, but I guess that's just like, you also forget what it's like to have that childhood wonder, and I think that's one of the best parts of having kids, and I don't know, because mine are, almost 3 and 5.5, so I'm still in, like, the beginning stage of it, but, like, getting to re-experience things kind of for the first time through them is one of my favorite things in the whole world because,
Mhm.
like you said, like, their minds will get blown at something that you have just kind of, um like, taken for granted, essentially, so you get to, like, recalibrate, like, "No, I should, like, appreciate this view or the wind or the sand," like, all of these little things because it's so easy and I think it goes back to, like, being unimpressed, right? Like, it's so easy to be unimpressed when it should
Mhm.
actually be the opposite. Like, you should look at, like, how does my toddler behave if I go take him to the beach? Like, everything's amazing, right? And
Yeah.
how do you get back to that place? And I think having kids is a little bit of a cheat code for that because, like, you're so tethered to them, and so it's a lot easier to kind of, to get back there. If you don't have kids, I don't know how you do it.
One thing I used to get frustrated. I was a Marine, and the Marines is a very macho culture. And I used to get frustrated with my fellow Marines. A lot of us we were young, we had young families, but there was this part of the culture that was encouraging them to not be family men. And to go away with the guys and leave their kids home, or just, no, I don't want to go home tonight. I'll just have to take care of the kids and do this stuff. Like, I lived for that stuff. For
Mm.
me, being a dad makes me feel so much younger than what I am. uh you know when my son is excited about something, I get really excited about it because, like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I want to be a part of this with you. Um and that was one thing I didn't see a lot of people doing in the military, and it was frustrating for me.
That's actually really surprising for me to hear. I would have assumed the opposite, that you would be more family-centered or because, like, to me, that aversion to having to show up and be responsible, like, to be the leader, the man in the family, like, if you're running away from that or if that's like a, if that's just, like, annoying to you in some kind of way, then you're a boy, right? Like, you don't
Mm.
get to call yourself a man because, like, that's a huge chunk of masculinity, right? It is, like, showing up for your family. It is sacrifice. And I say sacrifice loosely because, like you said, I mean, the the gifts of being a parent, it's like, what sacrifice? Like, what are you talking about? It's all worth it. So there's not a moment where I feel bad for myself or I feel like I'm missing out or I could have had this other life. I think all of that is such a lie. And so many people have fallen for that propaganda that, freedom comes from being completely detached and not have anyone that's dependent on you. And it's the opposite. It's like, there's this exercise that Jordan Peterson talks about, like he used to do when he was still teaching and it to kind of show like what is freedom. So he would ask the students like, who wants to play a game? And everyone's like, okay, we're gonna play this game. And he would look at someone and say, okay, start. And they would just freeze because like, what do you mean? And he'd go, someone else, okay, start. And no one would pick up the game. And they're like, well, we can't start because we don't know the rules. We don't know what we're playing. So, okay, we can't even begin until we set boundaries and we set rules, and we set expectations, and we have a beginning, middle, and an end. So without structure, there is no freedom, right? Like you're just
Mhm.
kind of in this floating in this abyss. And I think for men especially, like a lot of what gives you fulfillment is providing, and not financially, like providing like spiritually, emotionally, with your attention, with your presence. Like there's so many ways that you can provide and like show up to somebody. And if you're not doing that, if you're just like living this kind of like hedonistic, aimless life, like that's where you start to have the mental health issues, or you feel like lack of purpose, or you start to become depressed, etc. So it's like it's within those boundaries that you actually get to experience freedom.
No, that absolutely makes sense. It's like I've talked a little bit about this before. I'm a very much I'm comfortable in jeans and t-shirts, and that's my comfort. However, uh, you know, I can wear a suit. The military taught me, hey, if you're going to dress up, you wear something tailored. It doesn't have to be expensive, but that doesn't mean you can't make it look good. So I've told so many young men and women in the military, look, the reason why we do this with their uniforms is to teach you to also do this with your civilian stuff. And there's been several times where I've gone places and people are like, is that like you're overdressed on stuff? And it's like, well, I don't do this every day, so this is my time to look good. Because if I'm here at my house, like I wear stuff that's like I wouldn't want to be seen out in town in.
See, I don't think there's really an overdress. There's obviously, like, a few exceptions, I think more for women because like, we can go full ball gown if necessary, but, like, for men, I mean, obviously, you don't wanna wear a tuxedo to some place, that would be the equivalent of a ball gown, but I don't think there's ever a situation where if you're showing up in a suit, you're like, "Oh, he's overdressed." You're like, "Oh, no, he looks good." You know what I mean? And your point about tailoring is really good too because, no, you don't need to go spend $2,000 on a suit, although if you can, like, chef's kiss, they're beautiful, but you can make like a $300 suit look like a $2,000 suit with just like a little bit of tailoring.
What's funny about you just said, I actually own 2 tuxedos, 1 black, 1 white, and my fans are probably laughing right now because I have worn them on the show.
Well, that's great. You're an entertainer. By all means, sir, wear the tuxedo.
Yeah, I did a thing I called the Veterans Lounge, where I just put on a tuxedo and I acted like I was a lounge singer and just started singing songs.
Yeah, have fun with it.
Another part of me owning my weirdness.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think a lot of people, I hate the term adulting that they
Mhm.
use quite a bit because for me, most of the adulting that they talk about, it's like, no, this is the basic stuff that you have to do as a person. And if you make it this grand achievement, you're setting some really low bars for yourself. Um, and I think you also are selling yourself short. You're capable of so much more.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's all areas, right? And I think we're scared of failure, so there's a balance because you wanna have small wins because then that sets you up psychologically to take on the bigger things, but if, like, there's also the flip side of that, which is you get the neurological rewards of completing said small task, and now you might be satisfied to where you're not doing the bigger things. So again,
Mhm.
I think that's where making that list of 3 things is really good because it holds yourself accountable because it is easy to get distracted or, to say, "I'll just put that off until tomorrow."
Mhm.
And again, yeah, I don't know, like, what is adulting? It's, like, all the things that I would do as play when I was 12 years old, right? Like, my mom was always an entrepreneur, so every child of an entrepreneur knows, like, her staff is her children usually. So, I would be doing the filing and the emails and the cold calls, like, at 10, I was doing these things, and all of that I thought was so fun. So, I'm like, "Yeah, sign me up. I'll do all those telemarketing calls." And she was like, because she's like, "I know people aren't gonna be mean to my child on the phone, so I'll get a higher yes rate." Um, so yeah, what is adulting? I don't know. Again, what is a grown up? I don't think I'm one of those yet either.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny because so much of what we're doing we're trying to answer these questions and define these things that, when I was growing up, I was like, no one ever answered a lot of these questions. It was like, no, that's just what it is.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, I've had a lot of younger people be like, "Oh, you had parents who taught you these things, and our parents didn't teach us these things." And I'm like, "Oh no! If you knew the boomers, they didn't teach us anything."
Anything,
Like,
except that you were inconvenience to them. That's what they
exactly.
taught you. Mhm.
We had encyclopedias. You have eHow and YouTube to look up everything. Like, you've got you can learn more things than I ever could. But yeah, I remember going to a library, opening up a 5-year-old encyclopedia, and that was how we learned.
Do you remember they used to come door to door, and you'd
Yes.
buy, like, the letter of the book or, like, part 1 or whatever. Yeah, that's how we had to learn things. It was terrible.
What I love doing now is my mom still has our encyclopedia that we had growing up, and I think it came out in like 83. And I love opening it up today and just going through, because the stuff that's in it is a lot of that stuff. It's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, they don't teach that anymore."
Mhm, just so dated. Like, "Oh god, no."
Or just, things where perspective has changed so much, or, we learned more information. It was like, "Oh, oh, yeah."
Yeah, and I
That's
think part of it, our generation too, like Mark Andreessen says this thing, and I repeat it all the time, is there's no orphans after 21. So, like, you can sit there and say, "My parents didn't do that," or "I didn't have this," and like, right, all of these excuses as to why you aren't where or who you wanna be, and that's fine. Like, it's not to invalidate those, because like, sure, some people's story sucks, but the moment that you kind of become an adult, whatever, that is, he says 21, I think that's probably reasonable. It's your responsibility to now bridge that gap of like where and who you
Mhm.
want to be. So you can't keep like looking at mom. And that's like one of my biggest tips when it comes to psychology, like a lot of psychotherapy is it's like, tell me about your mom, tell me about your dad. And like you just live in this place of blame and it's not really constructive. So to me, what I see a lot now, especially with all of these like pseudo spiritual communities, it's trying to get down to the why of everything. Let me find this really deep meaning for this thing instead of saying like, "Okay, maybe that seems to require a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of time doesn't seem to leave me in a different position than when I started, or I could just say, like, there's this behavior I have, there's this pattern I have, I don't want one or either of those things. What do I do that's actionable to change my situation? And to me, that's way more efficient. I've done all of the things, and I don't know that I can confidently say, like, discovering the why was as important as just making the decision to change behaviors.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I it's funny to when you start looking at, okay, what actually does motivate us? It's and I think, that's so much of it. For me, I had to think about what why am I trying to work so hard on my PTSD? And for me, it was, I enjoy being a dad so much, and I want to be. I don't just want to be a good dad. I want to be a great dad,
Mhm.
and that was always my driver. Like, what can I do to be a better person, better in control of my emotions? And I eventually got to a point where, like, I can't remember even what it was that happened, but I looked at my son and I was like, "You're pretty fortunate. Other people would just freak out about this." And for me, it's just like, well, this is just something I have to deal with. And I go, you know, other people, other of your friends would have parents who just completely, totally lose it over something like this. And for me, it's like, okay, it's something I'll deal with.
But see, that goes back to being battle tested, like we talked before, right? So don't dismiss people because they have what you're saying is a failure, because it's not. Like you have to look at it.
Mhm.
For some people, that's absolutely true. The difference between like something that's a failure and something that's constructive is, did that person learn anything? Is there a lesson
Yeah.
in that? And then are they now a better person for it? Right. So like, yeah, some things happen and they suck. And you can have this idea of perfection. And that could be, someone that never gets hurt. You've never had a bump, a bruise, a heartbreak. You've never lost anyone. You have a perfectly intact family. Like, sure, you can have all of these pristine, like ideals that you aim towards. And as long as you're aiming towards that, you're going to end up someplace good. But the
Yeah.
point isn't to end up in perfection. It's just to like have that as like a constant reminder of like, where can I improve? So if you have these parents that like had a perfect childhood, as like they never had any strife, if you have a kid that's maybe a more difficult or like a strong personality, like that's not parenting. Like, they come into the world who they are. Like, yes,
Mhm.
what you do can help shape that, but a big core of it, they come in that way, like from the moment they take their first breath. So you're not guaranteed an easy child just because your life has been perfect. And I would say that a person that's like been through it is going to better navigate childhood, because like, good God, that's the hardest thing I've ever done is, have children. It's the best thing I've ever done, but it's also, it will test you second to none. So I think if I didn't have such a hard childhood or such a hard like young adulthood, like that would have been a lot more difficult for me.
You learn survival skills at a
Sure.
younger age than other people.
Mhm.
And that's yeah, I think it's really important, for people to recognize stuff like that. For me, I had a pretty easy childhood, and when I came in the Marine Corps, one thing that we always used to say that I still use today was the phrase, "Get comfortable being uncomfortable,"
Mhm.
and that was beat into me in my early years in the Marine Corps. And then when after I was past my 10-year mark, that's when I started getting sent to overseas to countries where English was a second language. And, you know, I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable because I didn't even speak their language. But I was like, okay, I can make this at that point. But I still try to live and preach that today.
Yeah, there's this Buddhist book that I read. It's called Mama Zen, and so it's like this Buddhist monk, but she actually lives at home. She lives at home. She's married. She's got when she wrote it, she had two small children, and like one of the practices that she would explain to especially young moms is like sitting in that tension. So you get stressed, especially in like the newborn stage, because like when you're the mom, they're on you 24/7. Like you can't even shower some of the time. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of times when you're going to, like, put them down for a nap or for bed, and there's, like, this feeling you have, like, this, like, tense feeling that you have because you want to go do these other things. You have this other thing that, like, needs to be done, needs you, like, this little that is not gonna sleep without you, and you're feeling constantly pulled in either direction, and it's not to alleviate that tension, it's not to feel comfortable, it's to actually, like, sit in that discomfort and say, "Okay, like, where is this coming from?" Well, it's because there's 2 things I wanna do that it seem in opposition. Like, sit in that, that's fine, and then do, again, like, one thing at a time. So, like, tend to the first most important thing, and that's obviously gonna be baby, and once you accept that, like, accept that you can't do both simultaneously, accept that you're gonna feel this tension, it doesn't go away, but it becomes more manageable.
No, absolutely. Um, uh, I see we're already at an hour, so I want to start wrapping things up. And I want everyone, if you're watching and you've never watched either of our shows before, please like, share, subscribe, thumbs up, all that good stuff, because we want to get everything out there in front of other audiences. Um, Candice, is there anything that you are plugging or that you'd like to specifically plug?
Right now, it's just my podcast, so Chatting with Candice. It's on all platforms. It's on YouTube. I just had an episode come out with Warren Farrell, which I like. That was a pinch me moment because I had been following his work forever. His work that he does with men and boys is second to none. His research is incredible, and he talks a lot about like men, the loneliness epidemic, what's happening to young boys, why are they falling behind, like very important topics. Like, why is there all of this funding for women and girls, but there's none for boys when like they're the ones that are hurting the most and suffer from like homelessness, drug abuse, suicide, all of those things. And he's really pushing back against like the political agenda that's really against men and masculinity. So his work is super, super important. I highly recommend checking out that episode. And we're actually trying to get him into the White House to propose something, so we'll see what happens with that, but yeah, his work's amazing, check out that episode.
Oh, definitely will. That's excellent. Thank you so much. And I do see, yeah, thank you for the mods for putting her links in the chat so everyone can find her. I do want to plug. I am doing this petition right here. It's on change.org. This is for the VA has been violating veterans' Second Amendment rights, just arbitrarily taking away their rights away. I put the link in the chat here, and this bill, which is right now being debated in Congress, would make it mandatory that the VA has to actually go in front of a judge if they believe the veteran is a threat. And the judge is going to be the determining factor if that veteran will lose their gun rights. So please go share, sign, do all those good things with that petition. We're sitting at 4,189 signatures. I'd like to see that get over 5,000 if we can. And I think that's an important bill and that's why I did the petition. We want to get that out there for everyone. Uh, Candice, for your podcast, when does it normally come out? Do you have a set time?
Thursdays. Yeah, typically Thursday mornings. We were doing 2 episodes a week, so we were doing a Monday and a Thursday, and then with my move and everything, I kinda dropped the political segment, which was on Mondays, but that'll be picking up again here shortly, so it will be Mondays and Thursdays, but right now we're just doing interview-based content, and that's Thursday mornings.
That's excellent. Yeah, I kind of stole from Scott Adams. I do coffees with the skipper because I watched him talk and he was like, "Yeah, I did my podcast, but I actually had more fun just drinking coffee and talking to people." So for me, every morning I do coffee with the skipper, and it's just kind of open ended, whatever the audience wants to talk about.
That's a
Something
great
that
idea.
it's it. I don't have to prepare. If I do, it's
Yeah.
great, but I don't have to.
Yeah, I love that. I had a cooking stream on Twitch, and I'm glad the mods are here. They're, like, the most loyal, like, community ever. They're, like, through thick and thin, but, I would do, like, cooking streams, and then at the end of it, we would, like, eat and have wine, and, like, to me, those, again, were the most enjoyable because you're actually interacting with your community. You're like, "This is why I'm doing it. This is the fun
Right?
part."
I couldn't do that. I'm not the greatest cook. But I have been doing more and more gardening things, and I'm actually getting pretty successful at it. So we'll see if that keeps up. Maybe I'll do more gardening stuff, but I'm just having fun. I'm just doing whatever.
Yeah, any
And,
kinda content, right?
right, it's all about creating the content, giving the audience something to talk about and interact with. Um, I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this. This has been just amazing. Um, thank you so much and for your generosity of your time.
Of course, you as well. I had a great time. You're a great interviewer. This was very fun.
Oh, I try. I just it's a conversation at the end of the day, and
Mhm.
if we can't keep it interesting, what's the point?
Absolutely, I agree.
So everyone, make sure you follow Candice on YouTube, on Twitch, on X. Um, I'm trying to think what other platforms. Now
There's
I'm
I mean, so many. Instagram, I think those are, like, the main ones for sure, yeah, and then just check out the podcast. If you dig it, hit subscribe.
Yeah, and if you're watching me for the first time, I'm on X veteran_nation, veteran nation on YouTube. Also have Instagram and Facebook. We also have a Facebook group. And if you're a veteran, make sure you send me a message. And if you'd ever like to come on and discuss, you know, all of the funny stories that we get from our service, open ended. invite to anyone watching. So thank you again, Candice. I really do appreciate it. Um, and is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to mention before we leave?
No, I think we had a really well-rounded conversation. I'm happy with it.
Thank you again. And everyone, make sure you check out everyone. And to my audience and everyone out there, as always, thank you for being worth serving.